What's happening? What's happening? What's happening?
And we're back!
Back again, JC's Pop Culture Pod, episode 7. Here, going to talk some movie news. We got some good shit to talk about this week, for sure. Definitely had some stuff break in the past couple of days. No, it's been a little bit longer since a week since the last one, but that's all right. I've tried to put out, some videos on the channel in between, in the meantime and in between time. Because, when this podcast originally started anyway, my main concern was not being able to have enough time to put stuff up on this channel consistently. So this podcast will be at least a way for me to put up at least one video a week and, something out at least once a week on the audio side, all podcast platforms, which you can check out JC's Pop Culture Pod on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, all that good shit, you name it. And of course, the video version here on YouTube. Appreciate you tuning in any way that you do so. But, I've been actually doing a better job this year on JC's Pop Culture channel with all my shit on YouTube, trying to keep that going here throughout the off season. Now, as you know, I do host another channel, Country Roads Webcast, where I cover WVU football. So in the fall, it might be a little bit more tough to, keep up these reviews and trailer reactions and movie news updates and shit the way that I've been able to here throughout the off season. So even if that does be the case, when that comes around, at least we'll still have this. So I say all that to say this pop culture podcast should be consistent. Try and do it every week or, as close to weekly as I possibly can. I think it was the last couple episodes. Last week I dropped 2 episodes. So then it's been a little bit over a week. I'd say, 8, 9 days or so maybe since the last one. So a little bit of movie news to cover, but we got some fun shit to talk about. And so basically, if you haven't listened to one of these before, basically I'm going to talk about some movie news stories that have happened in the past week since the last episode, some shit that I find interesting, which here on this channel is usually horror, comedy, or superhero movie related, sometimes some action films in there as well, of course. But going to talk about some of that. And then I always wrap up talking about what I've watched since the last podcast. So got a decent little list of things I've watched as well. So this should be a fun one. Let's dive in on the news stories. Won't keep y'all waiting anymore. Let's get to the good shit, especially since we're leading this off with some fucking Scream 7 news. We were all wondering what the hell was going to happen with that. Miss Melissa Barrera, off the project. And then, of course, they lose the director, Christopher Landon. You never know what the fuck's going to happen. And then all of a sudden, the movie not only has life again, but I think some people are really excited again. And, me personally, I think I'm one of those that is excited because the fucking thing for me is this, for one, means they're obviously probably paying Neve Campbell like she deserved to be paid for Scream 6. And I know I haven't had a chance to talk about it a ton on the channel yet, really, but I liked Scream 5. I actually liked it a decent bit, but Scream 6 I wasn't the biggest fan of personally, and I hated the Core 4 shit. So if the fact that we're getting away from the Core 4 shit, bringing back Neve Campbell, that's exciting for me to see what they're going to do with that. But to me, just as important, or I don't know if just as important, but just as big for me personally, is Kevin Williamson returning to the franchise as well. I fucking love Kevin Williamson. Obviously wrote the original movie, but if you saw my list of films from this past year, Sick was up there, and he was obviously had his hands in that. So him returning and directing a Scream movie for the first time ever, that's pretty fucking awesome too. So this is exciting news that actually came out today, the day that I'm recording episode 7 here of the podcast. But Campbell writes this on Instagram, so this is where this broke, on Neve Campbell's Instagram. And shit, guys, really exciting news. I'll give my thoughts on it more in a second, but here's what Neve Campbell had to say. Hi all, I'm so excited to announce this news. Sidney Prescott is coming back. It's always been such a blast and honor to get to play Sidney in the Scream movies. My appreciation for these films and for what they've meant to me has never waned. I'm very happy and proud to say I've been asked in the most respectful way to bring Sidney back to the screen, and I couldn't be more thrilled. Well, actually I could. While I've been so incredibly lucky to make these films with both the master of horror Wes Craven and the wonderfully talented Matt and Tyler team, I've dreamt for many years of how amazing it would be to make one of these movies with Kevin Williamson at the helm. And now it's happening. Kevin Williamson is going to direct Scream 7. This was his baby, and it's his brilliant mind that dreamt up this world. Kevin is not just an inspiration as an artist, but has been a dear friend for many years. To the amazing Scream fans, I hope you're as excited as I am. You see Untitled Scream 7, written by Guy Busick, directed by Kevin Williamson. March 12th, 2024 date. So they apparently just finished, whatever draft that is of this script that Neve Campbell shared in the Instagram post. And there it is in its entirety. If you're watching on the video side, you can see it there, but I'm sure you can just look it up on Neve Campbell's Instagram if you'd like. So that's our first news story. And as far as my thoughts on that shit, like I said, I'm excited. Obviously, being a big fan of Kevin Williamson, I think that he's an excellent writer. Him coming up with the Scream story when I first watched, I think it was a documentary on Scream, was one of the things that really interested me. How young he was and everything, and I've really liked most of the shit that he's done as well. I know what you did last summer. I know a lot of people think it's a Scream knockoff and hate it or whatever, but for me, it's just that nostalgia, one of those guilty pleasures and shit. And I know he directed, Teaching Miss Tingle, which was actually, I think the first movie he ever wrote, if I'm not mistaken. I think he wrote it even before Scream, or it was what he wrote after Scream. But I've never actually had a chance to see that one. But with him directing Scream 7, I definitely want to watch that, to watch his directorial effort in that. The TV show The Following, I was a huge fucking fan of. If you've never seen that, Kevin Bacon. And what's really cool about that show, guys, if you've never watched that, you should check that out. I think it had 3 seasons, if I'm not mistaken. It was 2 or 3. But Kevin Bacon, and there's a guy in prison that basically has this following of people that are like doing his bidding for him and stuff, even though he's behind bars and shit. And what's cool about that is that was actually, I'm sure a lot of Scream fans probably already know this, the original plot for Scream 3 was Stu was going to be the one working it all from behind the scenes with people out there doing his bidding, kind of this cult of Stu. And of course, we all know what happened with, Columbine and everything, and how much Scream 3 was forced to make adjustments and shit. But Kevin Williamson eventually took that idea, and he liked it so much he wanted to do something with it. So he went on to kind of twist it and make it into this TV series, The Following. Kevin Bacon's the lead, and you get that guy in prison, playing that what would have been, kind of Stu's role in Scream 3, and that TV series is fucking really good, actually. So if you haven't seen that, check it out. And Sick, recently, it should still be on Peacock, a slasher film Kevin Williamson released, was that 2022, I think? I can't remember, but it was in my top 10 of that year. I really fucking enjoyed it. And I think that, Kevin Williamson being back is a great thing for the franchise. But having Sydney back is now where things are going to get interesting for me, because I think obviously when you got Guy Busick back as well, that means that this is clearly probably taking place in the same world as Scream 5 and Scream 6, I would assume. And what we learned in those movies, obviously, is that, probably this isn't going to be alternate universe or anything. It's not going to be, going back. They're not going to DH Sydney or nothing. So this is probably going to be a story. Obviously they haven't confirmed yet or anything, but I wouldn't be surprised to see, what's his name? Grey's Anatomy, Can't Buy Me Love, fucking the actor's name's slipping me right now, but the guy that she's married to, from Scream 3, the cop or whatever, we know that she ended up with him. That was dropped, and we know that they have kids. So is this going to be like Ghostface, home invasion on her and her family and shit, which gives it a completely different spin? So I don't know. It could be really fun. They could do a lot of interesting things with it, and I think that's fucking going to be really tension building again. It's going to be very suspenseful if you're having Sydney protect her kids and shit. And not only, we know that she's pretty much badass now anytime she encounters Ghostface, but that gives it another layer if her kids are involved and shit as well. So I think they could really do some interesting things with this. I'm excited to see where it goes. We'll see if they bring back, what is his name? It's going to bug the shit out of me, guys. I just watched him, fucking Thanksgiving. He was a big part of that. Hopefully he's going to be, you know, in this Scream movie, I would assume, if, Nev Campbell's back and they're going off that storyline, because they've already dropped their married, unless they're going to get them divorced too as well. Patrick Dempsey. Fuck, why could I not think of that? Shit. Had to look it up, man. That's fucking disappointed in myself. I could think of every movie he was in. I could think of character names. I could picture his face, but I couldn't pull that fucking name up for nothing. Anyway, hopefully this means he comes back as well, and we'll see what they choose to do with it. But we're going to provide further Scream updates here on the channel, most likely on JC's Pop Culture Podcast episodes. So that's one thing. Another is, I don't think that I've got it pulled up here yet. Let me see if I can pull it up here as well, because I forgot to pull this up, because I didn't want to talk about it at too much at length, just because I've already done a video on it on the channel by itself. Guys know this is one of my favorite franchises. So, like I do with Superman that's coming out in 2025, like I've been doing with EA Sports College Football, things that I'm really, into, I try and update in their own individual videos on the channel, little short, news updates as soon as the news breaks and as soon as I can get to it. And Halloween's always going to be a franchise like that for me. So I've already updated this on the channel. You may have already seen it, but just in case you haven't, I'll talk about it here on the pod as well, in case you only listen on the audio side or something. But if you do, I encourage you to hop over to JC's Pop Culture YouTube and give us a subscription there, talking all kinds of pop culture, movies, TV shows, EA Sports College Football Game, all that good shit. But the Miramax TV series, we knew that Miramax had the rights. They were planning a TV series that they're hoping to launch into a possible cinematic universe. Is going to be a creative reset for the franchise. So it's not going off of Halloween Ends. It's not going to be a continuation off of that or anything. The foundation is going to be the original John Carpenter film. But I didn't really mention this in my video on the channel, but I also think that it's interesting to point out here, they don't mention that the original film is canon. So is this going back, to 78 and springing into a new timeline? Are they following a new character? Is it going to be a TV series based around Loomis? That would be my, number one guess. Would it be a TV series, based around Sheriff Brackett? It's because they're talking about more characters, in that film, perhaps a group of characters they haven't really focused on much in recent version of films, or even a number of them. To me, that kind of screams Dr. Loomis. But we'll see. I like that it's going back to the original film. It's a complete, reset. So they're kind of creating their own timeline. And I think the next news, of course, that we're probably going to get is the creative team. So fingers crossed for some really positive news on that. And, we'll probably hear what TV network or streaming service. I know Mark Helwig has a good relationship with Netflix, so that's definitely a possibility. But, I think that soon we'll hear what, creative team is involved. And hopefully we'll hear, is this a universe where 78 is canon, or is this a universe that's going back there and kind of creating their own shit from scratch? Because it says creative reset, but it also says going back to John Carpenter's original film. So I don't know, they need to kind of expand more upon that, but I love the fact that it's not continuing off of fucking, David Gordon Green's trilogy. It's not picking up anywhere else in the franchise. It's trying to, pretty much, like it says here, creative reset. And I think that that's probably to try and create an entry point for new fans, to where if they don't have any experience with Halloween franchise whatsoever, here, watch this TV series. We're going to build our own world from scratch, not only with this TV series that's going to go, hopefully, a couple seasons or so, but then carry that into, a cinematic universe where we do some more large scale shit. So who knows if this is going to be like the Dr. Loomis files. They follow some of his stories, and then that springboards into, a movie maybe at the end of the season. That would be cool if that's when he starts, finding out about Michael. Like maybe it's picks up. That would be a fucking cool idea, right? It picks up with, Loomis in like 1960s, early 1960s, and you don't even realize it until you get towards the end of season one. But last couple of episodes, it's when he finds out there's a kid that's killed his parents, and him meeting Michael Myers is like the end of season one, and then season two, is in the, or wherever you want to time jump to from there to go to season two. That could be an angle. I don't know. It's a lot of interesting things they could do, and we've never really had a Halloween TV series, so new ground for the franchise that I'm fucking excited about for sure with that one. And then sticking with Bloody Disgusting here, I think we talked about this movie briefly when JR was on for episode 6 or episode 5, whichever episode he was on. I don't know, they fucking all run together anymore, right? But Maggie Gyllenhaal's upcoming movie, kind of a contemporary retelling rehash of Bride of Frankenstein, titled The Bride. It's going to be coming Halloween 2025. Um, we know it's a new take on the classic tale of the Bride of Frankenstein. She is directing. It's going to be releasing October 3rd, specifically in 2025. Penelope Cruz as the titular bride, Christian Bale as Frankenstein, and Peter Sarsgaard as detective. Jesse Buckley also stars. So, it seems like that finally getting this Bride of Frankenstein remake off the ground. A lot of people have tried to do this for a while, including A24 here, according to this article and shit. But, that's kind of what, of course, there it is at the bottom. They mentioned it as well. Poor Things. I was like, that kind of made me think of Poor Things a little bit, because it was in a way kind of a pseudo Bride of Frankenstein type movie and shit. But this, I guess, will be more in line with, kind of a true remake, I guess, in some ways. But The Bride for Maggie Gyllenhaal coming in 2025, and Christian Bale starring alongside Penelope Cruz there. Also, upcoming fucking film I've been wondering about forever, Salem's Lot. We finally get some news on it. We was wondering if it was going to head to the fucking, graveyard, or the proverbial graveyard, I guess, that we've seen Batgirl go to. and potentially Coyote versus Acme now as well. But luckily, Salem's Lot not getting a theatrical release. I would have loved to seen this in theaters, but at least we're going to get to see this fucking movie finally. It's coming to Max this year, guys. Salem's Lot remake officially set to release straight to streaming on Max here on Bloody Disgusting as well. The long-awaited adaptation of Stephen King's Salem Lot from Gary Dauberman. It's still no date, but we've learned from the Hollywood Reporter this afternoon that the film will not be releasing theaters. As suspected, Salem's Lot will be given a straight to streaming release to Max. No date was given, but believe a fourth quarter release is likely. So sometime this fall, probably. We'll see what happens. The original theatrical release was September 9th, 2022. So maybe September, if we're lucky. I'd say sometime in September, October would probably likely. That would be a good season for it to come out. So Stephen King wrote earlier this year, I've seen the new Salem's Lot, and it's quite good. Old school horror filmmaking, slow build, big payoff. Not sure why Warner Brothers is holding it back. Not like it's embarrassing or anything. Who knows? I just write the fucking things. You gotta love Stephen King sometimes. He just doesn't give a shit. He'll say whatever he wants to, man. But Salem's Lot 2024 is set circa 1975 when Stephen King's first book was published. In Salem Lot 2024, haunted by an incident from his childhood, author Ben Mears returns to his hometown of Jerusalem's Lot in search of inspiration for his next book, only to discover the town is being preyed upon by a bloodthirsty vampire and his loyal servant. The cast includes Lewis Pullman, Mackenzie Lee, Alfre Woodard, Bill Camp, John Benjamin Hickey, Nicholas Cravetti, Jordan Preston Carter, William Sadler, Spencer Treat Clark, Cade Woodard, Deborah Christopherson, and Palu Asbayek. So, hopefully we're going to get, a good, adaptation of a vampire flick here on Max later this fall. We finally know Salem's Lot is actually fucking coming, guys. And the last piece of movie news I have from Bloody Disgusting, unfortunately, a bit more negative. We've been waiting for a while for a sequel to the Robert Pattinson Batman movie directed by Matt Reeves that, in my opinion, was just a fucking chef's kiss. Fucking everything I wanted in a Batman film. To me, it's quintessential, and I'm super excited for the sequel. I know there's pretty much been confirmation Barry Keoghan's returning as Joker, but there's been a ton of rumors as to who the other villain's going to be. I know for a long time I heard Clayface, then I've heard Mr. Freeze, and I've heard all this stuff, so don't have a ton of details yet. And maybe one of those reasons is because it's actually being pushed back. The Batman Part 2 starring Robert Pattinson moves to Halloween 2026. So we're unfortunately going to be waiting a little bit fucking longer for this one, guys. Originally set for release in 2025, it has been announced by WB today that the hotly anticipated sequel, The Batman Part 2, will now be releasing in theaters October 2nd, 2026. Matt Reeves will return to write and direct the sequel. Additionally, we recently learned the sequel script is being written by Matt Reeves and Mattson Tomlin, who also wrote The Batman, of course. Huge box office hit. Latest live action take on the Caped Crusader cost $770 million at the worldwide box office. No details for Batman 2 available at this time, but the deleted scene from the first movie suggests we could be seeing more of Barry Keoghan's Joker down the road. A spin-off series centered on Colin Farrell's Penguin is also coming soon, so we will have that to hold us over, at least the Penguin series. I don't know when that's releasing. I thought it was rumored this year, but I know it'll be sometime in between now and 2026 at least, so we'll have something in Matt Reeves' Batman universe in the meantime before this comes out in 2026. All right, got a couple pieces of TV news here from Variety as well and shit. Owen Wilson to star in golf comedy series at Apple Plus. Set in the world of professional golf, the Untitled series hails from writer Jason Keller. Apple has given the series a 10-episode order. Per the official description, Wilson will star as Price Cahill, an over-the-hill ex-pro golfer whose career was derailed prematurely 20 years ago. After he gets fired from his job at an Indiana sporting goods store and his wife walks out on him, Price hedges his bet entirely on a troubled 17-year-old golf phenomenon. So seems like a decently funny setup, and of course Owen Wilson usually delivers, so could be a good comedy in store. And we know sports comedies, Apple TV, Ted Lasso, right? They've obviously hoping to recreate that success, and hopefully they're able to with that one. In a bit more surprising television news, also from Variety, X-Men 97 creator Bo DeMeo fired ahead of Disney Plus series premiere. This one unexpected, and I don't think there's been a whole lot of explanation as to why quite yet. But, the trailer looked great. I think it really delivered on all the nostalgia we were all hoping to see. And from all accounts, seems like the show will be pretty good. But for this to happen so suddenly and just ahead of the premiere, you got to think something's going on here. But Bo DeMaio, the showrunner and executive producer behind Disney Plus's upcoming animated series X-Men 97, has been fired ahead of the March 20th premiere. Variety has confirmed, so literally about a week out. He had completed work on season 1 and season 2 of X-Men 97 ahead of his exit. He will not attend the March 13th Hollywood premiere for the show. His Instagram account, on which he had been previewing artwork and answering fan questions about X-Men 97, has also been deleted. He wrote and produced X-Men 97, which is a continuation of the popular X-Men animated series that aired on Fox Kids in the 90s. It's unclear why DeMaio was fired from X-Men 97 so close to the premiere, but he will no longer promote the show or be involved with future seasons. So I don't know really what to say on that one, especially considering the fact that fired with no news from, Bo DeMaio's side or, the Disney side of things. Really peculiar, but definitely something probably has to come out on that in the near future. We'll see if it does, but for now, we know that he just will not be involved other than, he's already made the first 2 seasons. So if you enjoy it, unfortunately, the creator's gone. So if there's, a third season, hopefully they're able to recreate that success if the series ends up being well or being good. But we never know what's going to happen, and we never know exactly why those circumstances occurred. But we know that he's gone at this time. So the last thing I have here from Variety, this one certainly piqued my interest. Okay, multiple fucking reasons, right? Ari Aster, I was a big fan of Hereditary, like most people. I was one that absolutely loved Midsommar. I think there were some people that did not feel that way about it. Whoops, did not mean to do that. But I fucking did. I loved it so much that there was one weekend where Ari Aster released the director's cut of Midsommar as well. And these fucking pop up little videos and shit on Variety are pissing me off if you're watching the video side. But um, and once he did that, I was like, I got to go see this shit because I think it was like 3 hours, 45 minutes. I can't remember, but it really made me love Midsummer even more. Midsummer, whatever the fuck, whichever the fuck one it is. Tomato, right? So I really loved both of those. But then Bo is Afraid. Unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to watch yet. And I've heard, it's a bit more of a mixed bag. It's even more out there, which is crazy to say after you've seen the first two. But I've heard it's definitely, an acid trip of a movie and shit, kind of a mind fuck. So I'm interested to check out and see how I feel about it because from people that I've heard that have watched it, it's really either a hate it or love it type deal. So hopefully I'm, one of those that love it. But I've been a fan of Ari Aster throughout most of his career and was definitely going to follow whatever he does next. And how about this fucking cast for his next movie? Another one coming from A24 titled Eddington. I believe it's going to be what I saw titled a contemporary Western. I'm sure they'll have more on that. But this cast, Joaquin Phoenix, Emma Stone, Austin Butler, and Pedro Pascal, all in an Ari Aster film. I mean, that's got to be a fucking banger whenever this shit releases, guys. Ari Aster has assembled an all-star cast for his next film. Like I said, this is from Variety. The film is titled Eddington. All joining Joaquin Phoenix, Emma Stone, Austin Butler, Pedro Pascal are also Luke Grimes, Deidre O'Connell, Michael Ward, and Clifton Collins Jr. A24 is financing and producing the movie, which, based on Aster's track record, we can only assume will give us nightmares. Plot details are being kept under wraps, besides the fact that the film follows a small town New Mexico sheriff with higher aspirations. Eddington starts production this week, with Aster writing, directing, and producing alongside Lars Knudsen and their Square Peg Bander. Two-time Academy Award nominee Darius Condey is the DP. So fucking good shit. Starting production soon. So hopefully, we'll have this maybe sometime next year. I'm guessing we'll get to see this movie Eddington from Ari Aster with a fucking all-star cast. Next up from Deadline, another movie that we've talked about in the past here on JC's Pop Culture Pod, SNL 1975, which I think is a pretty fucking cool idea, going back, kind of tracing the origins of Saturday Night Live and kind of how it got started and how it got big with some really cool cast members. You got people playing Chevy Chase in this film, people playing Belushi. I mean, it's going to be pretty fucking cool. And now they've added Andrew Barth Feldman, Kaya Gerber, and Finn Wolfhard to round out the cast of Sony Pictures SNL 1975, which is just the working title. so the title could change. But Jason Reitman directing this, and based on real life behind the scenes accounts of the opening episode of Saturday Night Live. Jason Reitman and Gil Kennan penned the script, so we know Jason Reitman's father, Ivan Reitman, was involved with a ton of these comedians. A lot of these firsthand stories that he was able to gather from notes and all those accounts. But from these new members here, Kaya Gerber is playing Jacqueline Carlin, Finn Wolfhard will play an NBC page, and Feldman is playing Neil Levy. And like I said, screenplay based on an extensive series of interviews conducted by Reitman and Kennan with all the living cast members, writers, and crew from Saturday Night Live. And this is kind of the synopsis right now. On October 11th, 1975, a ferocious troupe of young comedians and writers changed television forever. SNL 1975 is the true story of what happened behind the scenes that night in the moments leading up to the first broadcast of NBC's Saturday Night Live. It depicts the chaos and magic of a revolution that almost wasn't, counting down the minutes in real time to the infamous words, live from New York, it's Saturday night. So definitely a movie that I'm really excited about. I can't wait to see what happens with it. Sounds like they've rounded out the cast now with this trio here. And then this also from Deadline. How about a Spinal Tap sequel in the works? This is Spinal Tap. I know a lot of people love that fucking movie. I've actually never seen it. I think, it's a pretty much a mockumentary style movie that follows a rock band and shit. But the sequel is underway with the original cast. Cameos are lined up from Elton John, Paul McCartney, Questlove, Garth Brooks, and Trisha Yearwood. So pretty fucking good slew of cameos there for this is Spinal Tap sequel, which definitely I'll be going back and watching the original one before this one comes out and shit. But producer Castle Rock Entertainment announced today that the sequel to the 1984 cult classic This is Spinal Tap recently began production in New Orleans, Louisiana. Rob Reiner is directing again, and Christopher Guest, Michael McKean, and Harry Shearer all reprising their roles as the comic heavy metal band Spinal Tap. Reiner will also return as the documentarian Marty DeBurgi. Guest, McCain, Reiner, and Shearer conceived the sequel, which after a 15-year hiatus will see England's loudest and most punctual band reuniting for one final concert. Rob Reiner states, I recently spoke to Marty DeBurgi, who said that he was more than happy to take a sabbatical from his position as a visiting professor assistant at the Ed Wood School of Cinematic Arts to once again document Spinal Tap to ensure their place in the pantheon of rock and roll. This is Spinal Tap sequel in the works, guys. If you're a fan of it, I know you got to be excited about that shit, and I'm excited to now go back and check out the original and then check out the sequel as well. And the last news story I got before I talk a little bit about the Oscars and then talk about what I watched, and we'll wrap this shit up here on episode 7. Appreciate you guys checking this one out and shit. But this one really excites me, man. You guys know I've been a fan of Reacher. I was a fucking fan of Blue Mountain State. We talked about them trying to shop a sequel series around it. So I've always loved Alan Ritchson. And of course, how can you not love Arnold? I mean, he's the fucking best, man. You could go down the list of movies. I mean, T2 to me is one of the greatest movies ever made. I mean, fucking Predator. And then, I think one of his most underrated turns was in, Jingle All the Way, a Christmas comedy. It's the one that I watch every year. I fucking love Jingle All the Way. Got to get the Turbo Man and shit. But Arnold Schwarzenegger and Alan Ritchson teaming up. That's cool enough, right? But how about him teaming up for a Christmas comedy? So that literally falls right up my fucking alley. Talking about Jingle All the Way and shit. You get Arnold in another Christmas comedy where he'll be teaming with Alan Ritchson, starring together. Like I said, this coming from Deadline in the Christmas comedy titled The Man with the Bag for Amazon MGM Studios. Deadline with this exclusive article. Arnold set to star in holiday family comedy The Man with the Bag alongside Reacher star Alan Ritchson. Silver screen icon Schwarzenegger hasn't started a movie since 2019 when he shot Kung Fury 2, and he was last seen on the big screen in the same year in Terminator Dark Fate. We understand this one is aiming to shoot later this year. Adam Shankman, who directed Hairspray, is directing the film, which hails from Amazon MG Studios from a script penned by Alan Rice. The logline reads, when Santa's magic bag is stolen, he turns to his naughty list to find Vance, a former thief, to help him get it back. Along with his daughter, Santa, and a group of misfit elves, Vance will have to pull off the greatest heist of his life to save Christmas. No word yet is on who is playing, but our assumption is that Schwarzenegger, who over the weekend had a fun Oscars moment with Danny DeVito and Michael Keaton, that was my fucking favorite moment of the Oscars, by the way, will play Santa. And if Schwarzenegger is playing Santa, that is fucking amazing. And so I'm guessing that means that the character there, Vance, would most likely be Alan Ritchson. If Arnold's playing Santa, that makes this shit even better, honestly. But just with those two, and especially if you're telling me Arnold's playing fucking Santa, I'm down to watch this movie, The Man with the Bag, hopefully here in the next couple years around Christmas time. All right, and then lastly, before I talk about what I watch, gotta fucking get on here and talk about the Oscars a little bit. I wanted to do it before the Oscars, but then as it got closer and closer to the day, I was like, there's no point. May as well just wait till after and, do my bitching then. Because I didn't do my bitching when the nominations were announced. And I said, there are a couple things that I wanted to rant about. So I'm going to fucking rant about those real quick. And then we'll run down the list of winners and shit. And then I'll talk about what I watched and wrap up this episode and shit. But here's the fucking thing for me. Obviously, I know the one that everyone wants to talk about is Greta Gerwig and Margot Robbie, who, fuck yeah, both were snubbed, 100%. Margot Robbie was awesome as Barbie, and then the fucking Barbie movie, I don't think would have been as great without Greta Gerwig's involvement. I think it was great because of her direction, so hell yeah, those were snubs. If you saw my top 10 list last year, Barbie made that shit, so I enjoyed that movie. I think those were snubs, but they weren't the biggest snubs to me. To me, the biggest fucking snubs, and if you saw my top movie list, this is probably coming. How the fuck does you get 0 nominations for number one, Iron Claw? Phenomenal fucking movie. Well done. And, I guess, studios pick and choose and they really, push whatever movie they want, which is the whole process is fucking bullshit that they have to campaign for the Oscars when the people should just watch the movies and fucking do it based on that. But, that's a whole other thing I'm not going to get into. But Iron Claw, great movie, heartfelt, amazing story, true story, deserves some nomination in there, at least one. I would have had it as Best Picture nomination personally. But then the other one for me that I'm really bitching about is Air. You get fucking Affleck and Matt Damon teaming up, and they put together a fucking phenomenal film that for me was my number one of the year for pretty much the entire year until December, when then you had a couple movies come out late in that year, Killers of the Flower Moon and Iron Claw that I just talked about that kind of jumped it for me. But if I rewatch it, Air could easily be considered my number one film of last year. And you don't give it shit, you don't give it nothing. You can't tell me Viola Davis's performance as Michael Jordan's mom doesn't deserve a nomination. You can't tell me Matt Damon doesn't deserve a fucking nomination. Are you kidding me? That speech that he gives to Michael Jordan is fucking great. Viola Davis, fucking great. So yeah, they should have probably gotten it. But I think even more so, Affleck probably should have got a Best Director nomination. And the main thing it should have got was, adapted screenplay for Air. Air should have been in there. Those are my main stubs. I wanted to fucking rant about those when I'm talking about the Oscars. I had to rant about my shit. When everybody talks about the Oscar nomination shit, everybody's got to rant about their shit that didn't get in. That's my main rant. And the other rant would be my rant here with the winners, because you guys know I'm just not a fan of Christopher Nolan. But I'm not going to fucking bitch about it too much. I'll just run through the list of winners real quick, and then I'll talk about what I watched and get out of here for brevity's sake. All right, so Hollywood Reporter with this list here, if you're watching on the video side. Best Picture winner, Oppenheimer, unfortunately. Best Director, Christopher Nolan, really fucking unfortunately. Fucking pretentious asshole. Best Actor in a Leading Role, Cillian Murphy, Oppenheimer, which unfortunately that it was in Oppenheimer, but I'm glad to see Cillian Murphy get a win. Best Actress in a Leading Role, Emma Stone, Poor Things, which I'll talk more about that momentarily. Spoiler alert, but I had a feeling it would come down to her or Lily Gladstone. I was talking with a friend of mine, and we both kind of felt like if Lily Gladstone had been kind of more of the centerpiece of Killers of the Flower Moon, she probably would have won this. But you can't deny Emma Stone's performance in Poor Things, even though, it's a different fucking movie, but she was awesome in it. Best Actor in Supporting Role, Robert Downey Jr. wins. Unfortunately, it's for Oppenheimer yet again, because you guys know my feelings about Chris Nolan. But I will say for this was one that really made me smile. You get the pictures going around afterwards of how far Robert Downey Jr.'s come, and it's really fucking full circle, man, for him right now. He finally wins an Oscar. Well deserved. Should have fucking probably won one for Tony Stark, but superhero movies, horror movies, never going to get the love from the Academy. It's another thing that I could bitch about. But also, I thought Sterling K. Brown really gave an awesome performance in American Fiction. I want to shout that out. And also, if I'm going back to Best Actor, my vote would have been to Paul Giamatti from The Holdovers. I think he should have won that shit personally. Best Actress in a Supporting Role, Divine Joy Randolph does win for The Holdovers. That's the lone win for The Holdovers on the night. So glad to see The Holdovers win something, and her speech was really heartfelt and awesome, and I was really glad to see her get the win there, and I think well deserved on that one. Best writing as far as adapted screenplay is concerned, this is probably where I would have had Air in there. But if anyone is going to win, I'm glad to see it be American Fiction. And Cord Jefferson's speech was probably my favorite speech from the Oscars. I mentioned my favorite moment was obviously the twins reunion, but talking with Michael Keaton, who's still fucking killing it as Batman. Bruce Wayne, he could play that shit today. Give us Batman Beyond with Michael Keaton as the fucking mentor to Terry McGinnis. We fucking deserve it. But I digress on that. American Fiction, great movie I've talked about here on the podcast, but Cord Jefferson's speech was my favorite speech because he kind of, pleaded to the Academy, hey, y'all are fucking making all these $200 million movies. Why don't you make, 10, $20 million movies? Or, and he went on down the list because there are movies that you can make on cheaper budgets and make them well. Godzilla Minus One, who I'm going to talk about here in a minute. I haven't seen it, but it won Best Special Effects, and I saw the budget for it was like $15 million, man. And you mean Godzilla vs. Kong is, two, $300, $400 million, however much it is and shit. You can do it for way less than that. So, I thought that was a great speech from Cord Jefferson. And, it was his debut directorial shit, and he wrote the film as well, and so he wins an Oscar in his first go round. That's pretty fucking awesome for Cord Jefferson. Best writing of an original screenplay went to Anatomy of a Fall by Justine Treat and Arthur Harari. Haven't had a chance to see that film yet, so can't really comment too much on the winners or losers there. Best animated feature went to The Boy and the Heron, and I was surprised that Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse didn't win, but apparently The Boy and the Heron is actually a really good film. Best documentary feature film was 20 Days in Marpole. Best international feature film was The Zone of Interest. Best animated short film was War is Over, inspired by the music of John and Yoko, which obviously, the Beatles. Best live action short film, The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar, and that was actually Wes Anderson's first ever fucking Oscar win. Damn, I can't say Oscar right all of a sudden. But Wes Anderson wins him an Oscar. Best documentary short film, The Last Repair Shop. Best cinematography went to Oppenheimer. Best costume design goes to Poor Things. And I get that. It had very good, costume design, but I was surprised that Barbie didn't win there. Best makeup and hairstyling also goes to Poor Things. Best original song goes to Barbie. What Was I Made For? Billie Eilish wins, I believe, her second Oscar. Very impressive to be how young that she is. Best original score goes to Oppenheimer. And I'm very surprised here that Killers of the Flower Moon didn't win. I thought that the score from Robbie Robertson was fantastic there. And then I also thought that they may give it, to John Williams because I believe Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny was his final work. So I'm surprised that they didn't give it to him on that alone. But Ludwig Göransson wins it for Oppenheimer. Best production design goes to Poor Things as well. Poor Things, with, what, 4 wins, I think it was. Didn't win as many as Oppenheimer, which I think tied Everything Everywhere All at Once last year, which Everything Everywhere All at Once is a better film. I can say that even having never seen Oppenheimer, knowing Christopher Nolan. Best film editing goes to Oppenheimer. Best sound goes to The Zone of Interest. Best visual effects, like I said, Godzilla Minus One. And I absolutely have to watch Godzilla Minus One, guys. Haven't had a chance to, but I've got to do it. So that's the full list of Oscar winners. And lastly, we'll wrap this up by what I've watched since the last time I've had to chance to do a pod, guys. And one of those was Poor Things because, I wanted to watch at least half the Best Picture nominations. That was my goal. I accomplished it. Watched Poor Things, and I actually think it was enjoyable. And it was pretty funny in parts. Mark Ruffalo was hilarious, but it's definitely not what I was expecting, I guess, going in. I didn't really know what I was expecting. But, the first, I guess, act of the movie is black and white. But obviously the story that it tells is really good. And, get a really strong character by the end with Emma Stone's character and who she becomes throughout the story. And I really love the angle and the theme that they were laying into with that shit. But, at the beginning, you're kind of like, what the fuck am I watching? With some of the stuff that's happened when she first, she has the child brain, because spoiler alert, that's kind of the plot, is he finds Emma Stone's character who's, committed suicide, and he puts a child's brain into her, kind of re-raises her up and stuff. And it's kind of her adjusting to life and learning about the world yet again. And, but gets to do it her way. And and becomes her own person throughout this story. And it's really cool the way it unfolds. So if you do sit down to watch Poor Things, don't give up if you're a little turned off by kind of the absurdity and the weirdness of it. But it's definitely, kind of one of those auteur artsy films, I guess, if you're into that shit. And if you, however you feel about those type of films, I guess will determine how you feel about the movie at the end of the day. For me, it's not really my cup of tea, but I could see why, it won the things that it did and why it was, highly acclaimed. But after watching that, I kind of just wanted to watch something that was like the complete opposite, where I could just turn my brain off and just like mindlessly watch something and laugh. And so the movie that I ended up landing on for that was Maximum Overdrive. Stephen King's directorial feature there, Emilio Estevez and shit. Just kind of fucking absurdity, monsters and shit coming to life. And, not a lot to talk about with that one. The main thing that I want to talk about here and what I watched, guys, and I think I talked about this in the past, possibly trying to do this. And guys, I've done it. I've done it, and I thought I was just gonna dip my toe in, and then I thought, maybe I'll just it feels okay, maybe I'll take the stairs and get into the pool. But nah, what I did instead is I climbed up to the dive board and dove off that motherfucker head first and dove in to the world of Dune, guys. Fucking rude Dooner Nation engaged. I watched Dune Part 1 the same day that I went to the theaters to watch Dune 2. Big fan of both of them. Got reviews up on the channel for both. Check those out if you want to know more in depth. But I can tell you how much I enjoy both of them is I've since watched them both again. I've seen Dune Part 2 twice in the theater. And, I've watched Dune Part 1 since then. And not only that, I went back, I watched David Lynch's Dune as well the other day. And not only that, of course, I bought the first Dune book now that I've seen both the first two movies. And then just this morning, I finished watching on Max. You can look on there. They have the documentary on Jodorowsky's Dune that he was trying to make in the early 70s. So, yeah, man, I'm full into this fucking Dune universe right now, and I'm fucking loving it, guys. If you haven't had a chance to watch Dune or Dune Part 2, highly suggest you do so. Denis Villeneuve, which I finally figured out how to say that name after fucking long enough, did an absolutely amazing job with these movies. Can't wait till they announce, Dune Messiah. Ready for that shit. And definitely, if you want to know more of my thoughts on Dune Part 2, check out my spoiler-free review here on the channel. If you're on the YouTube side, if you're on the audio side, hop over to YouTube and check it out. And I have a spoiler-full review of Dune Part 1. Going to eventually do some Dune Part 2 spoiler talk. Maybe I'll do it in a separate podcast. Don't have enough time here to do it on this one. But just know that I love both of those movies. I think I gave Dune 1 8 or an 8.5. Dune Part 2 is a 9.0 for me as well, and maybe a 9.5. I don't know. I'm flirting with it. It's somewhere in between 9.0 and 9.5. It's a fucking great film. Best of the year so far. And I think at the end of the year will be a contender to be one of the best movies of 2024. So I've definitely watched Dune, Dune Part 2, David Lynch's Dune, Jodorowsky's Dune, all that shit. So full speed ahead into the world of Dune, rude Duners, all that good shit. So definitely got that going. Abbot Elementary, I've talked about it in the past, how I've really enjoyed that show. Finished season 2 of it. Season 3's on TV now. I think it's up to episode 7 or 8. I want to say, I think Bradley Cooper was in the most recent episode I saw and shit. So I'm catching up on that. I've watched a couple episodes of season 3. Pretty soon I'll be all caught up and be able to watch it, concurrently where it's running onto TV now. Great fucking comedy show. Watch it, especially if you're a fan of shit like The Office and Parks and Rec and stuff like that. It's that type of vibe, but it's really hilarious. I'm a big fan of Janelle James. Obviously Quinta Brunson's great, but the principal, Ava, played by Janelle James, she's awesome. She's hilarious, and she's fucking looker too. And then also, of course, spoiler review for this is up on the channel, so I won't dive into it too much. But out on Prime now, Ricky Stanicky. I did a spoiler full review for it, so check it out here on JC's Pop Culture on YouTube as well. But guys, that's what I've watched. That's the movie news. So that's pretty much the entire show. I'm looking at the calendar here, seeing what we got upcoming releases. I know Imaginary's out right now, but man, I've heard it's complete dog shit. I don't think I'm going to review that. I did review Ricky Stanicky this coming week. 1992 is coming out. I don't know if I'm going to check that one out or not, but I can tell you that here coming up in the later portion of March, we will have multiple reviews coming out on the channel because we have Roadhouse coming out on the 21st on Amazon Prime. So I'm going to review the original Roadhouse and, of course, review the remake now when it comes out, the reboot retelling, however the fuck you want to call it nowadays. And then, of course, tail end of this month on the 29th, we have Ghostbusters Frozen Empire coming out. So I'm planning to go back and hopefully, fingers crossed, review Ghostbusters, Ghostbusters 2, Ghostbusters Afterlife as well. But nonetheless, we will have at least those reviews coming up and plenty more shit to talk about as, Halloween news comes out. Like I said, I'm going to update that here on the channel. I'm going to update the DCU and Superman news. I'm sure that will be coming out of plenty now as filming has begun there. We know the Fortress of Solitude's in Norway. Got some videos up on that on the channel. Check out the DCU updates playlist there to check that out. And then, of course, EA Sports College Football 25. Got a shit ton of videos on it on the channel. I'll be updating that in the lead up to that release. So that's what we got going in addition to the movie news that we've talked about here. And I'll cover more movie news again next week on episode 8. So that'll pretty much wrap us up for episode 7. Be back next week. We'll talk some more movie news that's come out since then and talk about some shit I've watched from in between now and then in the future. So hope you guys have enjoyed this one. In the meantime, if you're on the YouTube side, you made it this far, hit the thumbs up button. Helps a shit ton with the YouTube algorithm, continuing to grow the channel here. If you're listening on the audio side, share it around with your friends that are fans of movies and TV shows as well, especially superhero, comedy, and horror. That's what I'm talking about a shit ton here on JC's Pop Culture, and leave us a rating review there on the audio side. That helps. Drop your thoughts in the comments on any of the news stories that we've talked about or anything that you've watched as well. Always love interacting with you guys in that way. And like I said, if you're on the YouTube side and you're a fan of comedy, superhero, horror, or the EA Sports College football game, be sure hop along for the ride here on JC's Pop Culture by hitting the subscribe button, where we'll talk a ton of pop culture content with me, JC. Having said that, appreciate you tuning into this episode 7 of JC's Pop Culture Podcast. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll catch you on the next one.